Greetings from Tokyo, I'm Trip, and welcome to the Hammer of Wrath. This week, you and I are going to paint Dante, the chapter master of the Blood Angels. Let's go. Thanks for joining me in the studio. This week, you and I are going to paint Dante, but a little differently than most. Before that, though, I want to talk very briefly about Tokyo Skytree. Now, that's where I shot the introduction to this video, and it is the largest tower in the world. It happens to be the third largest structure in the world as well. Now, for decades, Tokyo Tower, this iconic red and white tower that I'm sure most of you have seen, was associated with Tokyo and Japan. But in 2011, when Tokyo Skytree was completed, it simply dwarfed Tokyo Tower. Now, at first, it may just seem like sort of a publicity stunt, but Tokyo Tower actually served a functional purpose. It was a terrestrial radio and television tower meant to broadcast to the greater Kanto or Tokyo region. But the truth of modern progress is that many skyscrapers rose up much higher than Tokyo Tower around it, blocking the signal. So the creation of Tokyo Skytree was actually a necessity. It can broadcast a signal for terrestrial radio and television that simply can't be blocked by other high-rises. Over the summer, a friend and I from out of town went for the very first time, and we paid about $25 US to go up in the tower. And as you can see from the intro and this image, the view is absolutely spectacular. Now, I've lived in Tokyo for about 3 years, and I have traveled to many of the wards exploring the city in that time, and I thought I had an idea about how big Tokyo was. But once you get up that high and realize that the city literally stretches to the horizon in every direction, you begin to wrap your head around how massive a metropolitan area Tokyo actually is. Well, that's enough about incredible tourist destination. I do recommend it if you happen to be in Tokyo, but let's talk a little bit about Dante. Having seen some of the absolutely incredible paint jobs online, I was inspired to start mine. But if I'm being honest, I was a bit intimidated. Listen, I'm not an exceptional painter. I would call what I paint tabletop plus. It's great for a game and it might have a few extra flourishes in it, but it's not going to win any competitions. And I wanted to stand out. Let's be honest, competing for views on the internet can be a tricky business. And I floated the idea in my Discord of doing something different and painting Dante in white marble. I honestly said it as sort of a half joke. Being the amazing group that they are, my Discord channel challenged me to do exactly that, so not being one to back down from a community challenge, I gave it my best shot. So let me show you how I built and painted Dante in white marble. I began by priming the model in black, using Vallejo polyurethane primer through the airbrush, but you can brush this on for excellent results as well. And then I did a top-down zenithal highlight of white primer, just sort of to define the shapes and give me an idea of where the shadows should fall. And then I put white all over the model and then primed it from underneath using like a stony blue color. And once the primer coats were dry, I just set about shading the model using a combination of Drakenhof Nightshade and Lahmian Medium. The Drakenhof Nightshade is really intense. It's much too dark at its base level, so what you're going to want to do is cut that with some Lahmian Medium or possibly some water if you don't have any medium. And here I'm using like a 6-to-1 ratio, so 6 drops of Lahmian Medium and 1 drop of Drakenhof Nightshade, and just going through and filling in the deepest recesses. And once I've got that done, I'm just going to go through with a very light dry brush of white and a soft bristled makeup brush and bring back all my highlights to sort of help define the model. And once that's done, I'm going to go through, I'm going to apply my metallics, I'm going to apply this Fenrisian gray to all the soft seals and joints on the armor. And then I'm going to go back through using some Basilicanum gray contrast paints and shade those. You can use a Nuln oil here, but I just sort of prefer the way that the Basilicanum lays over the colors. It looks really great. Then I go through and then I paint the leathers on the belt and the haft of the axe. And then I'm going to work on things like the purity seals. Here I'm using Xandri Dust, and then I'll shade that with Seraphim Sepia. And for the tabard, I'm going to paint this red, and I'm going to use a trick here from Mediocre Hobbies. I'm going to use a Blood Angels red contrast as a base. That goes on really quickly and defines our highlights and shadows. and then I'll go back through and then I'll touch that up with some more traditional red paints like corn red and things like that to bring out the highlights a little more. So we use that anywhere there's red, the shoulder pauldrons, the casing of the weapon. And then we go ahead and get started on the golds on the model. Here I'm using Gehenna's gold. Now it looks like it's covering pretty well, but to the naked eye, you can see that it's going to need 2 coats. So I'll put 2 coats of everything on this to get a really solid base. And once I've got that down, I'm going to shade all of this with Reikland Flesh Shade Gloss. Now this is going to keep the really warm color to the golds, to keep them very rich looking. And the gloss will keep that luster that you would expect from a gold metallic. So I'm just going to work that around the model. Anywhere there's gold, I'm filling it in using Reikland Flesh Shade Gloss, making sure that it's exaggerating the deepest recesses. Now once that wash is dry, I'm going to go back through, and here I'm using Liberator Gold. It's a lighter gold color, and I'll just use that to bring out the highlights and details, just sort of the edges on all of these shapes. We're trying to bring the gold to life, keep it from looking flat. And then the final step here is using Canoptic Alloy. This is like a warm silverish color. And I just use that on the tips of all the gold shapes, whether it's the edges of these spikes or the edge of the halo itself, or along the highest points on all of these wings to bring out and exaggerate the shapes. Once the gold is done, I'm going to dry brush the base. Now, so far all of my Blood Angels have this white marble base, but on Dante I sort of painted myself in a corner, if you'll excuse the pun. It wouldn't look good if it was a pure white marble base and a pure white marble figure. You need that contrast, so I kept it a little darker. Now on the axe, we're going to do some wet blending here. I'm just working through a combination of blacks and blues, gradually working more blue into the paint and working it closer and closer to the edge to create these sort of gradations. They don't need to be perfect. On the tabletop, if you're more than a few feet away, it's going to look like a really good blend. And now here for the electrodes, I'm just going to go ahead and take that same blue. I'm going to make these sort of broad lightning bolt shapes here that indicate the energy dissipating through the blade, because as you'll see next, we're going to work our way up through progressively lighter and whiter blues, creating finer and finer details within these. So here we're using like a sky blue or a Baharoth blue. And then finally, we're going to end with a combination of white and blue mixed on the palette and a really fine brush to get our details here. I'm sort of losing my really fine motor control when it comes to stuff like this. I do as best I can. Just do as best you can here. It's never going to be perfect. There's always something to aspire to, and I try to up my game whenever I can. Now the last step here, and when you feel like you might ruin the models, we're going to actually do the white marble. And I have a separate tutorial for this on the channel. I'll link that in the corner there as well as the description below. And this technique, I've done it a few times before. You can see here on this banner for my Blood Angels. And it works really well over very flat surfaces like the bases on my miniatures or that banner. This is the first time I've ever tried to do that on a complex shape like this with lots of curves and recesses. You can argue how successful this is here. In some places it works better than others. Again, my brush control is not what it used to be, but I'm doing my best here to follow that recipe that I set out in that original video. And one of the last things I want to do here is this jet exhaust. I'm just going to use the airbrush to spray some sky blue in there, indicating that it's that hot, and then just a burst of white in the center. It's okay if we get a little overspray there, it just makes it look like a glow. And then to finish the model off, we attach the head. And there you have it, Dante done in a very different fashion than most would expect. Again, you can argue how successful the results are. That marble technique works really great on flat bases or things like that banner that I showed you, but there were certainly some challenges in painting it around something sculptural. I don't know, if it bothers me enough, I'll simply repaint it at some point. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. It was my genuine pleasure to make and share it with you. If you'd like to support the channel, please like, comment, or subscribe. That'll drive us to the front page of YouTube and help grow our audience. You can always join our Patreon. Joining at any level grants you access to our private Discord server where we share our progress and encourage each other to become better hobbyists every day. And don't forget to check out the t-shirt shop, bakingsodatees.com. In order to celebrate 3,000 subscribers, we've got our first Hammer of Wrath shirt available there in multiple colors, so check that out. Again, I can't thank you all enough for the support. It's been absolutely incredible, and I'll see you on the next one.